Hello. On the Delphic oracle in Delphi, in Greece, carved into the stone are a number of different sayings. The first two are know thyself and then nothing to excess. Two powerful keys to understanding oneself, to knowing oneself, and to balancing oneself so that there is nothing to excess, are the ideas of brain types and the ideas of body types or endocrine types. As these ideas suggest, each of us is either a gut person, a heart person, or a head person, and we have one particular gland in our body predominant, often followed by a close second and third, which make us what we are, individual. Now, we all are completely unique. No one will live the life that we live. So don't be afraid that it takes away from how special you are. But it's more that we have archetypical qualities which we share with other people. In this video, I'd like to stick to the idea of different types of brain. The first system I discovered of types was something called Sheldon's type system, which was of three types. One called a mesomorph, an ectomorph, and an endomorph. Mesomorphs were kind of more solid, but more defined. The endomorph tended to be fleshy, and the ectomorph tended to be quite skinny. These correspond to the Indian type system of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and also to the older esoteric idea of the instinctive moving brain, the emotional brain, and the intellectual brain. In the West, we're not too familiar with the idea of having a moving brain, a brain devoted solely to different forms of movement, of which physical movement in space is one part, but also the movement of, for example, ideas in our head and images which make imagination. And the movement of symbols, how one symbol affects another symbol, as in mathematics. Or if one thinks of a clock, how one cog affects another cog, affects another cog. These are all aspects of movement too. Leonardo da Vinci was thought to have been in the intellectual part of the moving part of the brain, as each individual brain has different levels within it. So we have an instinctive moving level in the instinctive brain, an emotional level in the instinctive brain, and an intellectual level in the instinctive brain, and so on through all of them. Instinctive people are quite solid in their body. Emotional people tend to be more fleshy, marshmallow-like, and intellectual people tend to be quite slim, skinny even. Instinctive people's interests, they can quite happily be alone often. They like to be in nature. They seem to sometimes prefer animals to humans. They amass knowledge related to recipes, for example, uh, and how different plants, etc., are as medicines and which ones are good to eat. Emotional people prefer people. They are interested in ideas such as novels, art. Not only them, but they can be more into it. But they're much more sociable. The most important thing in their life is people. Whereas intellectual people are more concerned with ideas, concepts, theories. If one considers that each particular brain attaches itself and becomes lost even in these different things, then knowing which brain one is centered in helps to see what kind of things are likely to prevent us from being able to sustain presence in the moment, or the things which will take us out of presence in the moment. Also, each brain can be considered to have a different language, which proves a little difficult within when they are communicating with one another within, but also when you have, for example, a gut person talking to an intellectual person, then the communication isn't 100%. They have very different ideas about ideas, even, which makes for less communication than possible. Also, for example, in a relationship, if one person is instinctive and another is intellectual, then it will provide friction or even arguments between them because they find different things to be important. Also, in the world, when people have different interests or consider different things to be important, then it leads to problems. I've observed that the vast majority of people in the world tend to be instinctive moving types. Then after that, I would say the emotional types. And although there are many intellectual types, you're very unlikely to ever meet an intellectual person who's centered in the intellectual part of the brain. They're like hen's teeth. If anyone has any questions related to this particular subject, you feel free to ask them. I'll do my best to try to answer them. But next time, I'd like to try to talk a little bit more about the endocrine types and how being a particular endocrine type can be in the same way as being a particular brain type, part of the glass which it's said that we see through darkly. These two ideas are like filters on our vision, on our life, and make a lot of our choices for us without our really knowing why or how. Anyway, goodbye for now. Good luck.